Hey heroes, and welcome to another fantastic episode of History of the Marvel Universe. This channel is sponsored in part by Patreon supporters. If you would like to help contribute and vote in monthly polls that help decide what topics get covered on the channel, then you can sign up for an amount of your choosing over at patreon.com/MaryMarvelate. The link is in the description below, along with other places you can find me. I'm sure by this point most of you are well aware of the origins of the Fantastic Four, a group of adventurers whose failed attempt at a historic space flight caused them to be doused in cosmic radiation that endowed them with superhuman powers. There's Reed Richards, aka Mr. Fantastic, a brilliant scientist who gained the power to stretch and contort his body like elastic. The love of his life, Susan Storm, aka the Invisible Woman, who could render herself and other objects invisible, as well as generate durable invisible force fields. Her younger brother, Johnny Storm, aka the Human Torch, who could summon, control, and even completely envelop himself in fire that allowed him to fly. And of course, Ben Grimm, the ever-lovin' blue-eyed thing, Reed's best friend and pilot who was transformed into a mighty superhuman with a thick, stone-like hide and incredible strength. While these four have generally remained the core members of the group over their many years of adventures and exploits, they have also made many friends and allies during this time, some of which became official members of the team. And so today we're going to delve into the various heroes who can count themselves among the extended Fantastic Four family, because at the end of the day, that's what Reed, Sue, Johnny, and Ben really are. A family. This, of course, as it often does, includes kids, as Reed and Sue married relatively early in their superhero career and had 2 children. A boy named Franklin, named after Sue and Johnny's father, and later a girl named Valeria, who was delivered by Dr. Doom and named after his childhood love. There's more to that story, but the complicated circumstances surrounding her birth are perhaps best left for another day. Now, we aren't going to touch on every single ally and acquaintance they've had over the years, but while we're talking about family, one we need to mention is Alicia Rice Masters. Stepdaughter of the villainous puppet master, she is a blind sculptor who fell in love with the Thing, and the two dated for years, albeit with some periods of separation. Another ally I want to at least give a brief nod to is Wyatt Wingfoot, a Native American from Oklahoma's Kiwazi tribe who roomed with Johnny Storm during his time in college and became a lifelong friend of the Fantastic Four. He was even with the team when they took their first trip to Wakanda and met the Black Panther, T'Challa, who became another longtime ally. But getting on to the topic at hand, one of the first examples of another hero trying to join the Fantastic Four came when they were visited by the Amazing Spider-Man, not very long after he first gained his powers. Now, in the earliest days of his career, he managed to make some money by appearing on televised variety shows, but between his refusal to reveal his secret identity and his declining reputation in the news media, show business became unfeasible, and he instead sought employment as a member of the Fantastic Four. However, he soon learned that the FF operated more like a non-profit organization than a business, and they weren't exactly offering a salary. Now, while he might not have made the best first impression, Spidey did later become an ally to the Fantastic Four, notably forging a friendship, albeit an often argumentative one, with the Human Torch, who was similar in age. I will note that there is an alternate reality where he did join the team as a result of their initial encounter, but if we start delving into the multiverse, we'll be here all day. There was also an incident early in the FF's career when Johnny, having had a number of solo adventures, briefly left the team. At the same time, the young mutant Bobby Drake, aka Iceman, had a fleeting falling out with the X-Men and aided the FF for a time in Johnny's absence. They had a few minor exploits together, but the Torch soon returned to aid them against an armored extra-dimensional foe, and Johnny later insisted that Iceman's brief stint with the team didn't count. The first real official replacement in the Fantastic Four came directly after Franklin's birth, when Susan took time away from the team for maternity leave. During this time, the Inhuman Crystal donned a Fantastic Four uniform and joined the team in her stead. Now, we already talked about her in our videos on the Inhumans, but her powers gave her control over the 4 classical elements of earth, fire, air, and water. She was also dating Johnny Storm at the time and remained an ally to the FF even after Sue returned to active duty. However, she later learned that her immune system was not equipped to handle the pollutants of the human world, forcing her to return to the hidden city of Atalan. Later, there was an incident in which Susan left the team again, this time due to a falling out between her and Reed. In the wake of that, Crystal's older sister Medusa joined the team as an Inhuman ambassador to the outside world. She possessed super strong prehensile hair and, unlike her sister, was no more affected by pollution than the average human. She later voluntarily left the team, returning to her own beloved Black Bolt after Reed and Sue reconciled. After that, there was an incident in which Ben Grimm was reverted to his original human form, during which Reed Richards hired Luke Cage, known at the time as Power Man, to fill in for him as the team's superhuman muscle. This, however, was an intentionally temporary measure, and Reed soon gave Ben an exoskeleton suit that simulated his Thing form, and his actual powers eventually returned regardless. Of course, I would be remiss not to mention HERBIE, the humanoid experimental robot B-type integrated electronics, who Mr. Fantastic built with the help of the Xandarian scientist Master Zar. Over the years, there have been numerous models of HERBIE robots that were built for various purposes, but most are relatively simple and similar in design and serve to aid the Fantastic Four. Of course, it is worth noting that in at least one alternate universe, Johnny was conspicuously absent from the event that gave them their powers and their subsequent adventures, and so in that reality, the Fantastic Four consisted of Reed, Sue, Ben, and HERBIE. Another notable ally to the Fantastic Four is Frankie Raye, aka Nova. For clarity, she's unrelated to Richard Rider or the Xandarian Nova Corps. Frankie is actually the stepdaughter of Phineas Horton, the inventor who created the original android Human Torch in 1939. While helping her stepfather move equipment from his old warehouse, she was inadvertently exposed to chemicals that endowed her with torch-like powers of her own. Eventually, she met Johnny Storm, the modern-day Human Torch, and became an ally to the Fantastic Four, aiding them on several missions and gaining probationary membership as a trainee. However, she never technically became a full-fledged member, and during a subsequent encounter with Galactus, Frankie volunteered to become his herald to spare the Earth, much like the Silver Surfer had done to protect his own home planet of Zan-La years earlier. Now, one of the most famous Fantastic Four replacements came at the tail end of the first Secret Wars, when Ben Grimm decided to stay and spend more time on the Beyonders' battle world, where he could shift between his human and Thing forms at will. But rather than leave his friends high and dry, he asked the Avenger She-Hulk to take his place as the team's muscle. She had a notable stint as a member of the Fantastic Four and remained one of their staunchest allies even after Ben inevitably returned from Battleworld and retook his position. Sometime after that, there reached a point where Reed and Sue decided to take a leave of absence together to focus on raising their son, leaving Ben in charge of the team. This time, Crystal returned to the team and used a serum developed by Reed that bolstered her immune system. For the fourth member of this version of the team, Ben recruited an ally of his, Ms. Marvel, but probably not the one you're thinking of. This Ms. Marvel was a woman named Sharon Ventura, who gained superhuman strength in a deal with the power broker Curtis Jackson. If you want to know more, we actually have a whole video all about her on the channel already. During her time with the team, she was also exposed to cosmic rays and mutated in a way that was nearly identical to Ben Grimm's transformation. And as a result, she became known as the She-Thing. That same dose of cosmic rays also caused Ben to mutate further, transforming him into a spiky thing form, and the two started something of a romance since that was during one of the times that Ben and Alicia were separated. Things between Johnny and Crystal, meanwhile, got increasingly tense. You see, sometime after their previous breakup, Crystal married Quicksilver and had a daughter named Luna with him, but ended up having an affair with another man. Furthermore, Johnny was, at the time, recently married, making the mutual attraction that he and Crystal had for each other increasingly awkward. Okay, as a side note, Johnny's marriage was also why Ben wasn't with Alicia at the time, as she had seemingly fallen in love with and married Johnny. But it was eventually revealed that Johnny's wife was actually a Skrull named Elijah the Laserfist, who replaced and impersonated Alicia while Ben and the others were on the Beyonders battle world. It was a whole thing that we're not going to get into here, but let me know if you want to hear more about Elijah in the future. The important thing for today is that things were understandably awkward and confusing at the time, and Crystal was ultimately ordered to return back to Attilan. Sharon stayed with the team even after Mr. Fantastic and the Invisible Woman returned, in part because Ben lost his powers once again, and so she effectively took his place on the team. During this time, there was also an incident in which a Renegade Scroll named Delilah successfully infiltrated the Fantastic Four's headquarters and incapacitated the team. As part of a scheme to obtain a weapon called the Inorganic Technotroid, she posed as Susan Storm and recruited a new Fantastic Four consisting of Spider-Man, Wolverine, the Danny Ketch Ghost Rider, and the Incredible Hulk, who at the time was in his Grey Hulk form and Mr. Fix-It persona. The fake Sue claimed that Reed and the others had been murdered by enigmatic assailants and sent the new Fantastic Four to find their supposed killers on Monster Isle, where the weapon she actually sought was located. Anyway, that whole mess culminated in a conflict involving the new Fantastic Four, the real Fantastic Four, the Mole Man, Delilah, and a group of Skrulls that had been pursuing her. Suffice it to say, Delilah's schemes were exposed, and the new FF soon disbanded. Although there have been a few scattered instances of that specific version of the team coming together again under various circumstances. In the meantime, Sharon Ventura made a deal with Dr. Doom that restored her to human form for a time, and the FF subsequently went on a caper across time that resulted in Ben Grimm being returned to his traditional Thing form. In the wake of that, Sharon decided to take time away from the team, but never really returned as a full member for reasons we discussed previously on the channel. Check the link in the description for more details there. After all of that, there was an incident in which Mr. Fantastic was seemingly killed during a conflict involving Dr. Doom and an alien entity known as Hunger. Both Doom and the Fantastic Four fought the alien, and in the end Doom succeeded in banishing Hunger into deep space, but was left badly injured in the wake of the battle, and in a petulant act of defiance attempted to ensure that if he died, then Reed would die with him. In truth, both Reed and Doom were plucked out of the time stream by a man known as Hyperstorm, who originated from a divergent version of the Days of Future Past timeline. He was the son of his reality's version of Franklin Richards and Rachel Summers. It was a whole thing, we don't have time to get into it. While Reed was missing, Susan took over his role as the leader of the team, and Scott Lang was hired to lend them his electronics expertise. He also aided the team on a number of missions as Ant-Man, effectively becoming their fourth member for a time, although this was not made official. Other allies who aided them during this time included Namor the Submariner, Elijah the Laserfist, Reed's father Nathaniel Richards, and Doom's adopted son Christophe Bernard. There was also a second team called the Fantastic Force, which included an adult Franklin Richards, known at the time as Psy-Lord, a Wakandan adventurer named Nakano, aka Vibraxis, who could generate vibrations and shockwaves, an Inhuman named Devlore, who could shift into a monstrous ape-like form, and the warrior princess of Elswen, Huntara, aka Reed's half-sister Tara Richards. During their relatively short career, the Fantastic Force was also joined by the likes of the Black Panther, the Human Torch, and She-Hulk, but perhaps we'll talk more about that team another day. Of course, Reed Richards eventually returned, and the core Fantastic Four group reunited once again. Later, there was an incident in which Reed, Sue, and Ben were all trapped in the negative zone. To rescue them, Johnny formed a substitute Fantastic Four, which included returning member She-Hulk, Johnny's girlfriend at the time, Namorita, and Ant-Man, whose status as a member of the Fantastic Four was finally made official. Oh, and for those unfamiliar with Namorita, the short version of her story is that she's the clone/daughter of Namor's similarly powered cousin, Namora, which means that she's also an Atlantean-human hybrid with similar abilities. Anyway, that version of the team disbanded after their mission was complete and the original Fantastic Four returned. Some years later, after issues surrounding the controversial Superhuman Registration Act left the FF divided, Reed and Sue decided to take a leave of absence while they worked on repairing their relationship and revitalizing their marriage. This time they asked another couple to take their place on the team, the Black Panther and Storm, neither of whom need much introduction or explanation, I'm sure. This version of the team fought together for a time, but before too long Reed and Sue returned and the original roster was restored. After that, there was an incident in which an ordinary banker from Queens named Dennis Sykes was exposed to medical waste while heroically attempting to save a truck driver from a pair of hijackers. He was found by the Thing and brought back to the Baxter Building, where Mr. Fantastic determined that he had been stricken with terminal cancer and had roughly 1 month to live. Soon afterwards, Dennis discovered that he also gained the power to alter and manipulate most forms of matter. And so before his time was up, Dennis was recruited by Mr. Fantastic to save the galaxy from Ego the Living Planet, who was in the midst of a star-consuming rampage. During this time, Reed made Dennis a full-fledged and permanent member of the Fantastic Four, and Susan gave him the code name Flux. Dennis then proved to be instrumental in this mission's success as he located and extracted a biomineral parasite that was causing Ego's rampage. However, Reed realized too late that this use of his abilities exacerbated his condition, and Dennis Sykes passed away about a week later. There's more to that story as well, but if you want to read it for yourself, you can check out the miniseries Heroic Age 1 Month to Live. In the meantime, Mr. Fantastic also established an organization called the Future Foundation, with the goal of shepherding the next generation of great minds and helping them work together to bring about a better future. The roster for the Future Foundation's special class came to include Reed's own super genius daughter Valeria Richards, her brother Franklin, 2 members of the aquatic Uhari race, Wu and Vil, 3 Moloids, Mick, Kor, and Tong, and their Moloid guardian Turg, who lived as a severed head in a floating jar, the young mutants Artie Maddox and Leech, a young clone of the wizard Bentley 23, the eldest of the Superhuman Power Pack siblings, Alex Power, and the alchemically animated android Dragon Man. Now, I will note that while the Dragon Man is not really known for his intellect before this, his cognitive abilities had been greatly upgraded by Valeria. After that, there was an incident in which Johnny Storm was thought to have been killed while holding off Annihilus's insectoid forces in the negative zone. In his will, Johnny left his spot on the team to his old ally, Spider-Man, who happily accepted. However, the rest of the FF decided to retire the Fantastic Four name and colors out of respect for Johnny's passing, and instead donned matching black and white uniforms. They were still known as the FF, but during this time the initials referred to both the Future Foundation as a whole and the original core group, the First Family. While Reed, Sue, Ben, and Spider-Man continued to serve as the core superhero team, the larger Future Foundation also included Dr. Doom and Reed's time-traveling father, Nathaniel Richards, not to be confused with Kang the Conqueror, who shares the same name. Of course, having survived his battle with Annihilus, Johnny eventually returned from the Negative Zone and the Fantastic Four was reunited. The Future Foundation continued to exist primarily around the Special Class, which subsequently included others like the Wakandan engineering prodigy Onome, while Spider-Man, Doom, and Nathaniel turned their attention back towards their own individual exploits. After that, there was an incident in which the bodies of the core Fantastic Four team began breaking down on a molecular level, and so they decided to go on an adventure into other universes to find a cure with Franklin and Valeria. While they only planned on being gone for a few minutes from the Earth's point of view, they were unwilling to leave the Future Foundation unsupervised and opted to put together a temporary team by having each of the four recruit a replacement. Reed, Sue, and Ben all went with someone who'd been on the team before and contacted Ant-Man, Medusa, and She-Hulk respectively. However, Johnny forgot to recruit anyone, and at the last second asked his girlfriend at the time, a pop star and model named Darla Deering, if she could do it. Wait, isn't this like the third time someone got onto the team because they were dating Johnny? Anyway, the First Family didn't return right away, and Ant-Man's FF served as the Fantastic Four on Earth for longer than they expected. Fortunately for them, when trouble inevitably reared its ugly head and the Mole Man attacked with a giant monster, Darla was able to use Ben Grimm's old Thing exoskeleton suit to join the fight, becoming Miss Thing. During this team's tenure, the Dragon Man also developed a pair of Thing rings that allowed Darla to summon her suit by bringing them together. During their time as members of the FF, Darla Deering and Scott Lang started dating, but after the First Family returned and Scott took a break from superheroics, he and Darla drifted apart. Also, Scott sorta kinda ghosted Darla after his daughter Cassie came back from the dead and he put everything else in his life on hold. In any event, Darla kept her Thing rings, and so while she may not be an active member of the FF, she can still do her thing when necessary. Meanwhile, in the wake of the multiversal secret wars that nearly destroyed all of existence, the Fantastic Four were split up for a time, with Ben and Johnny returned to Earth, while Reed, Sue, and the Future Foundation worked on rebuilding and exploring the cosmos. Thinking Reed and Sue were gone forever, Ben and Johnny retired the Fantastic Four name. However, they did briefly team up with the child genius Lunella Lafayette, aka Moon Girl, to form a Fantastic Three, before being joined by her Saurian ally Devil Dinosaur to form a short-lived incarnation of the Fantastic Four. Of course, the other half of the First Family eventually reunited with Johnny and Ben during a confrontation with a cosmic entity known as the Griever at the end of all things. During this battle, Reed summoned to his side a small army of former Fantastic Four members, including Crystal, Medusa, Luke Cage, Nova, She-Hulk, Ms. Marvel, Spider-Man, Wolverine, Ghost Rider, Hulk, Iceman, Ant-Man, Namorita, Black Panther, Storm, Ms. Thing, and Herbie the Robot. Suffice it to say, with this much power, the Griever was thwarted, the multiverse was saved, and in the end, the Fantastic Four returned once again. After that, the family expanded even more as Ben and Alicia finally got married, and subsequently adopted 2 children of their own, a Skrull named Nakala, or Nikki as she became known on Earth, and a Kree named Jo Ven. Of course, the story doesn't really end here, as the Fantastic Four remains Marvel's most famous family, and like all families, they will probably continue to expand as time rolls forward into the future. In any event, that's all I've got for you this week, but thank you so much for watching this video. If you enjoyed it, be sure to leave a like, subscribe to the channel, and share it on your favorite social media. As always, the issues referenced in this video are listed in the description below if you would like to read them for yourself, as well as links to other places you can find me. Let me give a special shout out to all of my Patreon and Ko-fi supporters, Twitch subscribers, and YouTube members who help make the channel possible. By signing up for any ongoing amount on any of these platforms, you'll get your name in these special thanks here, but Patreon is the one that helps determine what topics get covered on the channel via monthly polls. That being said, if there's anything in particular that you want me to talk about, be sure to let me know in the comments. But that is indeed all I have for you this week, and so until next time, true believers, Excelsior!